Welcome to Political Musings. I'm your host, Amy Manuel. This is the very last episode of Political Musings. I have decided to end the show, but I want to go back because it's the last one, go back to where we started with this show. Not everybody that listens to this show, especially if you only started tuning in the last year or so, realizes that the roots of this show go back to, if you remember, 2003. There was a huge uproar with the Dixie Chicks. Talk about canceling. Whew, that was serious canceling. What happened was that Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks, while doing a concert in London, said, and I'm paraphrasing here, although George W. Bush may be from Texas, we don't agree with him. We're not for this war. We're not for this violence. Oh, no, you can't say it like that. And I remember at the time my boss, who was a conservative Fox News watcher, right-wing talk radio listener, said, well, when I go to a concert, I'm there for the music. I'm not there for politics. And I was like, hold on, boomer. All of the concerts from your era were political. All of the musics were political. You practically invented, your generation invented the social justice, anti-war concert, mega concert. Woodstock, and there's Wattstack, and there's a Monterey Pop Festival, and all these different things. And if you think of the music of the time, it was very political. And I think even some of the songs you may not have realized were political. So I started thinking about that, and I've been thinking about it for years, thinking, you know what? This could be a radio show. This could be a show where we play music that's political and talk politics. And so I started on this show in 2017, in the fall, November of 2017. And at the time, I had decided I would also run. At the time, I was already doing another show called The Intersection with Jack Bishop of blessed memory. Jack, I lost my friend Jack in November, shortly after the election. And so I was already doing that. And because I was running for office, Rick McNeely, he had me as a guest on his show here at Fishbowl. And Jack and I had been talking about trying to get liberal politics back on the air in North Texas. And so I talked to Jack, and we met with Rick, and we met with Sammy about starting a show here. And Jack said to me, Amy, you should do this show yourself. And so I thought, the show that I've always wanted to do is this one that's been on my mind since about 2003 that's mixes this idea of not only is music and art currently mixed with politics, it always has been. And so that became, and then each week I would have a a list of songs that would play, and they would have some sort of theme. Sometimes it was an issue theme, sometimes it was a artist, and I more and more started adding guests on that were running for office, or they were with some sort of political organization. As the years went by, if you look, I've got playlists for every issue, multiple playlists really for every issue. And I've talked about many, many different artists. And so that was where I started. When we started going out over YouTube, and really before that, when we were on Facebook Live, we started having problems where the licensed music we could play over the Fishbowl website, but it wasn't licensed to be played over social media. And so eventually, about a year ago, I guess, I stopped playing music. But I'm not going to play music today, but I am going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about how social media, not just social media, how music and theater and movies have been political from the start. Let's start with music. Now, I already brought up, we had Woodstock and we had Wattstack, and I've played music from those on multiple shows. But if you think about just about any artist you can come up with in any era, not error. Currently we're in an error, but if you go back to different eras in time, even back to the days of the troubadour, in some ways, it was those musicians and those, and theater and opera even were the only place where you were allowed to be political. So this notion that this is something new. I was just talking with my board op here, Angelo, who was my first board op. So I've got him back. I was talking about how I saw a post on Facebook. It was about Saturday Night Live. Well, I haven't liked it since it got all political. And I was like, the show's been on for 50 years. I'm 60 years old, so I've been watching it all 50 years. And I can tell you, for example, who played the president for every president, or just about. Some of them I've forgotten the names of the actors, so I apologize for that. But, for example, in that first season, who played Gerald Ford, President Gerald Ford? That was Chevy Chase. And really, he didn't try to sound like President Ford or look like President Ford. All he did was he made him clumsy. That was it. That was the whole bit. After that, after Gerald Ford, we had Jimmy Carter. Who played Jimmy Carter? Dan Aykroyd. I can still remember some of those sketches. And then we had Bill Clinton, and I cannot, from the Bill Hammond, maybe? I can't remember the name of the actor. I can see his face. Played Bill Clinton. So each and every time there's a new president, it's sort of a competition to see amongst the cast who is going to play that president. So there's never been a season of Saturday Night Live that wasn't political. And this is true for a lot of... I grew up in the 60s, the 70s, and 80s. And on the TV were all these Norman Lear shows. When we think about an issue, has it been covered on any of these shows? Yes. Well, Laugh-In was preceded Saturday Night Live. So did the Smothers Brothers. Laugh-In gets its name from, at the time, there was a lot of protests going on. Amongst them, there were sit-ins and die-ins, and even in Chicago, I think there was a shit-in where they clogged up the toilets in the public restroom. They took laxatives, and I'm not kidding. That really happened. That really happened, and so. But Laugh-In, the show started out, the first episode, they're walking around with placards that say things like, "Make jokes, not bombs." So it was and they gave the Flying Fickle Finger of Fate award, the whole show was very political. And before that, I mean, Smothers Brothers got kicked off the air multiple times for being too political. I think David Steinbrenner did a bit about God. It talked religion and politics. It was in everything. And on the TV were all these Norman Lear TV shows. Amongst those, there was All in the Family, which spun off the Jeffersons and Maude. Now, Maude had an episode where she has, a year before Roe v. Wade, because it was already legal in New York, an abortion on TV in 1972. Was it political? 100%. There's a scene where in All in the Family, they're constantly talking about the conflict between Rob Reiner, Meathead, the hippie, and Archie Bunker, and and I'm quoting what people said about it, was the lovable bigot. There's an episode with Sammy Davis Jr. where Sammy Davis Jr. is going to take a picture with Carol O'Connor's character, Archie Bunker, and right when the picture snaps, Sammy Davis kisses Archie Bunker on the cheek. Political? Absolutely. If you look at the Jeffersons, that was showing a family going from the Bronx up to the big leagues, right? Now we're up in the big leagues, making our turn at best. And there's the controversy over their son's girlfriend, their wife, and their in-laws being mixed race. Was it political? 100%. 100% political. Brought up those issues. Now, comedy, I think, has always been political. I can't think of any time when it wasn't. Drama, on the other hand, how about that? One of the things I'm a big fan of General Hospital, and when they were still on the air, I watched All My Children and One Life to Live. And I will never forget when they had the character Bianca, Erica Kane, the famous character from All My Children. Her daughter Bianca comes out as a lesbian. On General Hospital, Lulu has an abortion. So there's always been this mix of the of the political with the drama with on TV. How about movies? If you go online and look for a list of top political movies, there's some new ones that have, and I say new. When I say new, I mean came out when I was an adult as opposed to when I was a kid or before I was born. Some of the newer ones on there are movies like Dick. Now, I love this movie. It was a made for TV movie, and it came out, I think, in 1999. It is a parody of All the President's Men, which came out in the 70s, which is based on a book by Woodward and Bernstein. And in it, Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford play Woodward and Bernstein. And it's the whole Watergate scandal. It's based on that. Well, Dick is really a parody of All the President's Men, more than it is kind of an original. You see the references to All the President's Men over and over, and you understand that Will Ferrell is really just playing Robert Redford. He's not playing Carl Bernstein. There are others that are probably one of the newest ones that I see make the list now because it is so relevant is a movie called Idiocracy. Idiocracy, starring Luke Wilson, Dallasite local. He goes into this sort of a thing that keeps him alive, and the world changes, and hundreds of years later he wakes up in a world where everyone's stupid, and he turns out to be the smartest man in America, and he's not very smart. But he figures out, hey, maybe it's a bad idea to put essentially Gatorade on the crops. And I've been thinking as I watch the current administration, the current regime doing what they're doing, I just keep waiting for them to start watering the crops with Gatorade, because it is so incredibly stupid, all the things that they do. To the point that here recently, I can't even, saying it out loud, oh my God, they had sponsors for the White House egg roll. The Easter celebration, they had sponsorships like NASCAR. And that's, that's straight out of that movie. Yeah. That's, everything is sponsored. Everything is sponsored in the movie Idiocracy. And here we are. Some of the older movies that make it, there was a movie that was about nuclear war called Failsafe. But the one that I remember that was really a parody of Failsafe is Dr. Strangelove. Has there ever been a more political movie than that? And it's so much fun. If you've not seen this movie, Peter Sellers plays 3 different roles. One of them is the President of the United States. Another one, he's a British officer at the installation where this General Jack D. Ripper, has decided, and here again we come into, here we are again, because life parodies art, I guess, at this point. Jack D. Ripper gets it in his head that the Russians have infiltrated our precious bodily fluids by putting fluoride in the water. Anyone listen to Alex Jones? No, I hope you don't. I hope you don't. But, we have RFK Jr. in the White House, in the administration, head of HHS, who is really pro raw milk and getting rid of vaccines. And he's had to walk some of that back because, guess what happened? Like the same thing that happened in Samoa when RFK Jr. went there and convinced the people to stop vaccinating. They had a big measles outbreak. And what has happened here in Texas? Because of the idiots that listen to Donald Trump and listen to RFK Jr. and listen to Fox News and Right Wing Talk Radio and all these others, we've had a measles outbreak because we have the stupidest administration ever. They are stupid. Oh, welcome to idiocracy. How about, let's go back to the music. We talked about Woodstock and we talked about Woodstock. How about Elvis? I had a guest on a couple years back. She wanted her music to be Elvis. Elvis has a song, In the Ghetto. I could put a whole playlist together of Elvis music that was political. I did one show that was the Supremes because I had a guest on who was running for Texas Supreme Court. And so I do my research for the show, and I find out, it turns out that Diana Ross and the Supremes would travel with LBJ and perform at his shows. Now, I had the privilege of going to the 2008 Democratic National Convention, and I kind of felt sorry for John McCain that year because he had like the Beach Boys and Kenny Rogers, and that was about it. Everybody else who was anybody was in Denver. Actors and musicians, artists of every kind were in Denver for that Democratic National Convention. And the same was true at the inauguration. They had all of these wonderful, brilliant, famous performers. Aretha Franklin sang at the inauguration. And I renewed my love of Stevie Wonder. I remember when, as a little kid, when the album that had Sir Duke on it came out, loving Stevie Wonder. I was a big fan. Well, then I'd kind of forgotten about it. And Stevie Wonder performed at Invesco on that day that he received the nomination, that President Obama received his first nomination, and then candidate Obama. Stevie Wonder performed, and I realized, oh man, I love Stevie Wonder. How great is Stevie Wonder? But I have my lists of vote songs about voting that I play, or when I was playing music right before every election day. And amongst them is a Stevie Wonder song, You Haven't Got Nothing. But let's go back further. You know what else is on that list? There's a song that's Jimmy Durante and Bing Crosby singing their fake presidential election song. There's a Judy Holliday movie, and I've forgotten what it's called. I'm going to have to look it up again. I've got it here somewhere. There's a Judy Holliday movie, Born Yesterday. And Born Yesterday is this garbage tycoon. Here, I'm just going to read to you from IMDb. While in Washington to lobby for favorable legislation, a garbage tycoon hires a reporter to teach his ex-showgirl mistress proper etiquette to fit in better to high society, but she ends up learning more than he bargained for. I am distantly related to Judy Holliday, but that movie, wow, that was about a lot about socialism. That was, if you remember the McCarthy era, this was the kind of thing that they went, ooh, can't have that. The big Red Scare in Hollywood. People got blacklisted. So there were whole groups of people that got blacklisted because they were communists or socialists. And again, we've come back around. And now we're talking about banning books. And again, because we live in idiocracy, I can't even, saying it just makes me lose my mind. And we talk about books. We're talking about banning books and removing from the shelves of the Naval Academy's library Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. But somehow, along with books about the Holocaust and all kinds of other things, because they're too woke, they're too DEI, and yet they left not one, two copies of Mein Kampf. We live in idiocracy. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And let's talk about some of the other music. We spoke about Diana Ross and the Supreme. There's a whole list of Diana Ross and the Supreme songs, which could be considered political. How about a newer one, Doesn't Matter If You're Black or White, which was Paul McCartney. And Sly and the Family Stone had Everyday People. If you go back much further, though, go back a few decades, you've got Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit about lynching in the South. When did music become political? When did rock concerts become political? They've always been political. Always. Always. And if you go back in black comedy, there is, and his name just slipped my mind, but if you look at Richard Pryor and you look at um, Eddie Murphy and all these different people, they did comedy. They didn't shy away from politics. That same with Jewish comedy. Jewish comedy. If you look at the movies of um, Mel Brooks, I'm a huge, huge Mel Brooks fan. How about History of the World Part 1? It's Good to Be the King. The Inquisition, what a show. How about Monty Python? Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Not as nearly as political as Life of Brian that got banned in many places. Life of Brian was huge controversy. There were, in every era, there were movies, there were, as soon as we had TV shows, there was music, there was art that was political, there was the mixture of the arts and politics. It's always been a thing. And that's the thing I wanted to talk about today. So I'm going to go. Let's talk about. Let's go back to music. I told you I have that great list that I love of music for voting. There's Stevie Wonder. You Haven't Done Nothing. There's the Bing Crosby and Jimmy Durante one. There's another one a lot of people don't remember that back in the 60s, the jazz artist Dizzy Gillespie ran for president. Dizzy Gillespie ran for president. That's right. And Dizzy Gillespie had a campaign theme song. What he did was he took the jazz classic Salt Peanuts and he changed it. Instead of Salt Peanuts, it was Vote Dizzy, Vote Dizzy. And Ella Fitzgerald had a song, Vote for Mr. Rhythm. Now, that one I play often. I love it. It's about a minute and a half of Dizzy Gillespie singing Vote Dizzy, Vote Dizzy, and then just jazz solos for 10 minutes or more. It's fun. It's fun. One of the things that I've talked about often on this show is immigration. And there's a song that I just absolutely love called Who's Gonna Build Your Wall? Who's gonna build your wall? Who's gonna build your wall? Now, how about gun violence? I've done shows on gun violence. Warren Zevon's Lawyers, Guns, and Money. Would you call that a political song? I would. I would definitely say that's a political song. How about Aerosmith, Janie's Got a Gun? There's Perfect Circle, Counting Bodies Like Sheep. Okay. Make room here. The boss lady is here. And I am so excited.
Yes.
Are you feeling better?
Yes. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing well.
Excited to be here. Let me turn my phone off so it doesn't ring. I'm sad. I'm sad. It's a what is it called? A double-edged sword.
Yes.
Right? Of course I'm sad. Amy has been such a big part, an integral part of Fishbowl Radio Network for so many years. And of course, when you're with somebody for that much time, then they become a friend. And so you're more than just a client at Fishbowl Radio Network and a host. You've become my friend. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful for that. And so I know I don't like to say bye. I like to say we'll see you soon. You know, I'm not going to say bye. We'll see you again. Even if we go have lunch or if we talk about rocks and other things. But how are you feeling?
I'm feeling well, but I'm going to have to, this chair is driving me crazy because it's too low down.
Ah, okay.
I feel like
okay.
Oh, all right.
Thank you, Angela.
That's
we have
been
such
driving me crazy.
great techs here.
Yay. Yay. Thank you, Angela. No. So I have been talking about where the show began, which is how music and movies and TV shows and art in general have always been political.
Yes. Everything is political.
Everything is political.
If you really think about it, art is political. You know, paintings, art is political. And I didn't learn that until I was living back in Washington, D.C., and I would go to the Smithsonian's, and they would have people that, you know, you would take the tours, and they would really go in depth about the paintings, you know, what the colors meant, what this meant, and it was always political. There was some political aspect to it. And so at that point, I realized everything's political.
I love when people say to me, oh, never talk politics or religion or sex, and I'm like, well, so what do you talk about? That's kind of everything.
Sports, I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of everything. Yeah,
even sports can be political.
I was having this conversation with my husband yesterday. We went out to dinner and we were talking, and I was telling him, I said, I'm so sad Amy's leaving because she's, you know, one of our voices for, you know, the alignment of where I'm aligned with her politically, not the fishbowl. Fishbowl is open. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe people have a right to believe, you know, what they believe and to get to speak what they get to speak in a respectful manner, and we can have these conversations. But I was telling him what I don't like is when people get into these political conversations and I don't mind debating. And I don't mind talking the facts and the issues, and I don't mind agreeing to disagree. But I do mind when it starts getting like really loud and everybody starts screaming and everybody's trying to convince you to get on this other side. I don't mind listening to somebody else's facts, and maybe they'll change my perspective because I don't know everything. But when it starts getting really loud and you know, I'm not going to say disrespectful, but just really loud and heated, where I feel like, oh my God, people are going to get in a fight because of this, you know, then I'm like, I'm out, you know, because it's just, for me, it's just too much. It gives me anxiety. But I think it's healthy to have political conversations and conversations about sex and religion and these things. We need to have conversations. When you stop talking and when you stop asking questions, or you stop listening to other people's perspectives, and how can you grow? Now, you don't have to agree with them at the end of the day, but you should listen.
Right.
You know?
Well, what I've been talking about, this show was built on the premise that it's been, I've had it said to me multiple times over the years that, well, you know, when I go to a concert, I'm not there for the politics. Okay, Boomer, you know about Woodstock, right?
Right, that was all political.
Like, all of the 60s music, even some that seems apolitical,
yes,
still pretty political when you get down to it.
Yes. Well, and you can choose, you know, again, I believe if you look at anything, you can skew it political in everything. Um, and there are some people that can see that and go beyond the words of the song or what that artist is trying to say on a political. And then there's those that just see it surface, you know, surface level. So um, there's some people that just want to stay out of politics completely, not realizing that no matter what, you are in it. You are in the matrix. You are in the matrix. It is political, you know. And so whether you want to accept it or deny it or just not have anything to do with it, you're still a part of it. You're still going to be affected, whether it's politics at your job, politics at, you know, the political climate in our country, from the people we vote into office. Things will affect you. It's a ripple effect.
Right.
So whether you choose to accept that it's political or not, it is, and you're going to be affected in some way, somehow.
To quote one of my favorite people of blessed memory, Molly Ivins, and I'm going to paraphrase here because I can't remember the exact quote, but politics is not a painting on the wall that you can decide you like or don't like.
Right. It is. It just is. Yeah.
But it can also be fun and funny.
Oh, so much humor. And that's what I liked about you, because even the things that you post, and I will always continue following you because you'll post some stuff there and I'm just like laughing on the floor. You know what I mean? So,
most of it's borrowed, honestly.
Well, but still, it's funny and shared. You know, I might have not seen it. So, like,
Right.
there's just, and again, as in everything, it's how we look at it. That's why great comedians Angela, who was the comedian that was always speaking politics? The older man. Yeah, like George Carlin. I mean, he's genius. You know, he can get up there, very political, but funny as heck, right? But most comedians also look at life in a certain way, and then they turn it into something comedic. And again, it's political.
Well, I love when people say, well, you can't talk about this or that, or you can't say this or that, or you'll get canceled or whatever. You can say anything you want as long as you're funny.
That's it. That's
If
it.
you are funny, I think, but one of my biggest issues...
You're safer if you're funny, you know.
Right.
You won't...
One of my biggest issues with Bill Maher now is he stopped being funny.
Yeah.
Like, I watched Ricky Gervais talking similarly about the same things, and I was laughing my ass off.
Yeah. Well, Stephen Colbert, he's
Yes.
still funny. Like, he's still funny. Bill Maher too. I agree with you, because me and my husband would watch him a lot, and he was funny. But then, yeah, what happened? Something happened, and I don't know when it happened.
Well, it got much worse with the pandemic. That really broke him. And I'm sorry. Oh, you poor thing. You had to do your show from your mansion in Brentwood. and you didn't have anybody to spend it with because you are awful and nobody wants to be around you anymore. You know?
He got canceled, yeah.
Well, he got canceled after 9/11 for saying something.
Yes.
And he seems to have forgotten.
Right.
Like that he's now, and now he's going to the White House and having dinner with Kid Rock and Trump. Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. And it's great. It's, if you step back and look at it, like all of it, it's also very comical. You know what I mean? When I was watching Kid Rock there with him in the Oval Office, and I was just like, I sometimes I'm speechless. Like all you can do is laugh sometimes.
Right.
You know, you're either going to cry or laugh, and I choose to laugh because it's gotten to that level, like, of this. Am I in a dream? Is this happening?
Well, I mean, I was talking earlier about, you know, in the movies, politics in the movies, and how we're now living in idiocracy. That was not supposed to be real life.
Yes.
But it's quite true. But there's another movie that came out I think in the 90s. Starred Alan Alda, John Candy, Rhea Perlman, amongst others.
Who I love. I love Rhea Perlman.
Called Canadian Bacon.
I never saw that.
I highly recommend it
Okay.
because we're now living through it. So they,
I thought you were going to say Handmaid's Tale.
everything. All my favorite things are
we're
always
we're living in it.
humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this movie, Alan Alda, who is president, his numbers are dropping, and he's like, "We need a Cold War." One of his advisors, and so they start a Cold War with Canada, our neighbors to the north. And
Wow.
John Candy and Rhea Perlman, they work at a plant that's been shut, a hydroelectric plant,
Right.
and so they go across to capture the hydroelectric plant in Canada. They're in Niagara Falls.
Ah.
So they go across. And Rhea Perlman gets left behind. And she ends up, and she's in the hospital with big stuffed animals and being taken care of.
Bigger than her. She's so tiny. Yeah. Wow. I'll have to check it out, definitely. But, I know this is your final show on Fishbowl Radio Network on a weekly basis, but I do want to invite you back sometimes to come back and get behind the mic here at Fishbowl. Like I said, you're an alum now. You're going to be an alum now. You're always welcome at Fishbowl Radio Network behind the mic. You are a brick in helping to make this vision come true, and the vision is giving people a platform to be able to say and speak what they want without being, the media is under attack. We opened Fishbowl 15 years ago, and now it's really being under attack. Books, media, and it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say the views and the opinions of the network, the person and the host are not necessarily the views and the opinions of the network or
Right.
the owner of the network. But I do want to allow people to have conversation and discussion. And that's why I really loved your show, because not only because it happened to be aligned with my politics, but even if it wasn't, we have shows here that aren't aligned with my politics.
Right.
But they get the ability to have those conversations, and whether we agree or disagree, people out there can learn. And at the end of the day, the person has to do their due diligence. But what I loved about your show was that you infused the music with the topics of whatever you were discussing with, which did show people that it is political. Music is political.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to miss you tremendously, Amy. I suck at goodbyes. I just don't like to say them. I just don't. So, we will see you again soon, and hopefully you'll visit us at our Sharkies just to come and hang out with us, or we'll go have lunch. But it has been an honor and a pleasure to have you as part of our network. We're so grateful that you have given us a chance to help, keep this platform going. And then should you ever feel like you want to return, the door's open. This is your school. This is your high school. Or your college. You're an alum of Fishbowl Radio Network. Always.
Well, thank you so much, and I have really enjoyed doing this. It's been a pleasure, and I do miss playing all that music, because
Yes.
that was half of the fun of prepping for a show, was looking for music that fit the theme.
Yeah. Now, our website, we play, what a lot of people don't understand out there is every entity, every platform has to pay copyright.
Right.
So we do. So through the website, the listening only, they can hear the music. They're not going to get shut down. But some of these other platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all these, they have,
Spotify.
correct, they have restrictions, and they don't pay the copyright licensing. So then you can't put it out there in that way. So, I wish that would change, but it's not going to.
I mean, if they could just make some sort of subscription fee
Right.
to allow you for the licensing for the music
Yes.
to be used, that would be great.
Yes.
But for many years, what we would do would be, that if you want to hear the music,
Right.
I was going out over Facebook Live.
Yes.
But if you wanted to hear the music, you had to go to the website.
Right.
And so eventually, here in recent months, I'd say the past year, I've just slowly removed all the music.
The
from
music,
show.
right. And that was the premise. That was what you wanted to do.
So that because I wasn't getting the
Yes,
licensing.
yes, yes. On the other platforms, just if anyone's listening, on the other platforms.
On the other platform.
Yeah.
On Fishbowl,
Yes, we do.
you can over the
Uh-huh.
website
Yes.
because
We're
Fishbowl is licensed.
right. And each individual platform has to have their licensing. And if they don't, then you're subject to their policies and rules and they could shut your show down. Right.
Right.
And so, again, I wish that would change. I don't see it just because I keep up with the copyright license. We always get emails and newsletters and all that stuff from them. It doesn't look like anytime soon they're going to do any of that. So that's unfortunate to those other platforms. But we're so happy that you're here, and I know it's about time to wrap up the show. But I wanted to step in and jump in here and say thank you for being a part of Fishbowl family. Thank you for the great show and content that you put out, and that we are going to sincerely miss you behind the mic here at Fishbowl. But I want you to truly, if you ever feel like, hey, I want to come in and do a show, you just call me and you come back in here and get behind this mic and do a show. I know that you're also on another platform. So have you invited them to that other platform and what that's about?
My other show, I started actually before this show.
Uh-huh.
And that's called The Intersection. I started hosting it with Jack Bishop back in 2016.
Okay.
The first year that we ended up getting Trump elected.
Why?
But we did the show, and it was very political, and then when I started doing this show, I stopped doing that one for a little while.
Okay.
And Jack was hosting on his own. And then I started joining in just as a participant. He started having some health issues, and I ended up taking over.
Okay.
Well, we lost Jack in November.
Oh.
It was a bad week.
Wow.
Right after the election.
Wow.
Just a couple days later. But ended the week on a high note because my son got married, and I love my new daughter-in-law.
That's awesome.
She's wonderful. But so I'm still doing that one, and I've decided to take that one in a different direction because we're all tired of talking politics.
But we have to. We have to stay in the game. I know time is coming up of the end. Is there any last things you want to say?
I just want to remind people how important it is to remain engaged.
Yes.
And so even though I'm not going to be doing a weekly show that talks about politics and introducing the audience to these candidates all over the country like
Right.
I have in the past, and even on The Intersection, we're just going to be playing trivia and fun and games.
Right.
And taking a break from it. I'm still, right now here in Texas, we're having municipal elections.
Right.
And every time there's an election, I work the polls as an election, as a clerk or an alternate or judge.
Yeah, you're very active, and you've gone to Austin several times, and
4 times this session.
I appreciate the work you do, and we'll be having you back. We'll be having you back, even if now you'll be on the other side. You'll be a guest whenever we need that political perspective and view. So it's not over for Amy, but just it's over for Political Musings. And again, Angelo, thank you for producing the show today. Thank you, Amy, for everything. We love you here, and you are always part of Fishbowl family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as I remind you each and every week, get registered, get informed, get politically active, and go vote. And if you don't have anything nice to say, come sit by me.